Worried about work, family, or other relationships? I'm Chuck Wolf, a pioneer in emotional intelligence. When live on the Emotion Roadmap, I use a proven 4-question framework to turn emotional roadblocks into clear next steps on air in real time. Join us Tuesdays at 5 p.m., twice a month on YouTube. Subscribe, go to YouTube, type in @CJWOLFE5, and ask to be notified when I'm live so you don't miss a show. Call in when you see the number on screen. In 1990, the psychologists who sparked the science of emotions asked me to help translate their research into everyday tools. I built the Emotion Roadmap, a simple 4-question model that helps anyone improve how they manage their feelings and influence others ethically and effectively. On the Emotion Roadmap, take the wheel and control how you feel. We turn worry into clarity and stress into strategy. Each 45-minute episode blends practical psychology, common sense tools, guest experts, and live caller coaching. Smart, capable people often get stuck when emotions run high, and this show helps you get unstuck fast. When you call, you help everyone else who listens. As I help you, I explain how the Emotion Roadmap works so that everyone listening is learning to use the process. To learn more about me, go to www.emotionroadmap.com. I have been very lucky in life and have worked with and learned from some of the greatest thinkers in the world at Harvard and Yale, other places, and I want to bring what I have learned to hopefully make a meaningful, positive difference in your lives. Enjoy and tell your friends and your family. This is Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I'm broadcasting to you live right now from Simsbury Television, Simsbury Media. And I want to talk to those people who are new to the show, because I believe I have some viewers who are brand new. And so this show is about my commentary on world events, on places and ideas and things that maybe are challenging emotionally, and how you might use what I call an emotion roadmap to make life better for you. And so I want to spend a moment or two just talking a little bit about that emotion roadmap, a little bit about where it comes from, and also how it works. And then I have a topic tonight that I'm intrigued to talk to you about. It has to do with when you go out to eat, when you take that moment to spend a few dollars for you and somebody special, or you and your family, or you and a friend, or you and a business partner, or some customer. What do you want to have happen when you go out and you dine out? What's the experience you're looking for? And what happens when things don't go quite the way you hope? What's the protocol? What's the best emotional intelligence response to the kind of things that might happen when you're out dining? And so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. It's based in part on some work I'm doing these days. And I just had this wonderful opportunity to meet with a group that does Mexican restaurants. And they take great pride in what they do. Many of them are really excellent at food preparation, at understanding what customers and guests are looking for, handling challenging circumstances that arise at their restaurants, and a few that sometimes are troubling and that I want to talk a little bit about tonight, that just what is the best way to deal with situations that arise at a restaurant. And I have a few personal experiences. I'm sure you do too, those of you that are listening. And I'd love for you to call in and talk about what makes for a great evening or lunchtime or breakfast for you when you go out to dine out and you bring somebody with you, or you just want to go out on your own. What makes it special for you? What creates the kind of feelings that causes you to say, you know, that was great. This is someplace I want to tell my friends and my family and my business acquaintances about. I think everybody should come here and give this place the business because they're wonderful at what they do. And I just had a wonderful experience. What creates that for you? So if you feel like it, you see on the screen, there's a number to call, and you can call in at any point in the show. I'm on from 5 p.m. to 5:45. I try to make it every other Tuesday, but based on the months and based on the studio's availability, it sometimes arises on a different Tuesday. But it's almost always on Tuesdays from 5 to 5:45. If you subscribe to my channel, which on YouTube is CJWOLFE5, I'll say that one more time, CJWOLFE5. CJ, for my initials, Charles James, CJ, and my last name, Wolfe, WOLFE 5. If you go to YouTube or just type into your computer CJWOLFE 5 and then space and then YouTube, and my channel comes up. And if you subscribe to it, you'll always get a notification that I'm on when I'm live. That might help. In any case, tonight I want to tell you a little bit about the show. The show is about helping people learn how to manage their emotions more successfully. Who wouldn't like to know how to handle some circumstances or challenges that they faced in the past? Who wouldn't have liked to know how to do it better than maybe how it actually turned out? Today's children in some of our school systems are getting some help and some training on social and emotional competencies, and they're learning more about dealing with feelings, perhaps than children in the past learned. Certainly, when I was growing up, there wasn't much time spent on, hey, Chuck, how do you handle anger? How are you handling anger? Do you want to know something about learning how to handle anger? Or sadness, or loneliness? Or what about embarrassment? Or sarcasm? How are you dealing with those things? And by the way, when you create a feeling that's unpleasant for someone else, how do you feel when you're doing that? I wish there was more conversations happening when I was growing up, but there weren't. So now I'm trying to do the best I can to take what I've learned from the pioneers in emotional intelligence, which I was very lucky and fortunate to work with. And in working with them, I was brought into the mix to help them find a way to make it useful to people. And what I came up with, what I've learned, no matter what definition of emotional intelligence you might be using, and there's lots of different ones out there, basically, we're just talking about being smarter about dealing with your emotions and about dealing with other people's emotions. All the definitions that are out there try to say something similar, but it comes down to simply being smarter about your emotions and about other people's emotions. And what I came up with was this idea that when you are stuck, when smart people are stuck, when they're good critical thinkers, excellent problem solvers are stuck, they often are stuck because something emotional is happening. Either inside them, they're worried perhaps about a conversation they need to have with somebody else, but they're worried about it escalating or feeling confrontive when it's not their intention, but they do need to address something. Maybe it's about accountability with another worker. Maybe it's about an aging parent whose keys you got to take away, or a teenager who you love dearly but is seemingly hanging out with the wrong people. So when you're dealing with a tough circumstances, challenging circumstances where the stakes are high, a lot of times we hesitate we don't know what's the right thing to do emotionally because we were wondering what's the right thing because this is so important. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to get this wrong. And so when I looked at the science of emotional intelligence, and I understand that some of it is ability based. Sometimes we think that somebody that's really negative, sarcastic, insulting, we often think of them as a bully maybe, or at least very rude and difficult to be with. And we think that they do it purposefully. And I believe it's true that they do. Many of them do it purposely. But I also know, because of the work I've done over the years, that there are people that actually don't know how they're making people feel. And when confronted with the reality that they're causing people to be very upset around them, but for whatever reason no one's told them, they actually feel terrible about it and look to change. And the reason I say this is a possibility is because one of the science aspects of emotional intelligence teaches us that our abilities to deal with emotions aren't the same. Some of us are very good at aspects of emotional intelligence, and some of us are not so good. And most people are somewhere in the middle on various emotional abilities. Someday I'll talk about emotional abilities and what they all are. But let's just say one of them is the ability to identify how somebody else is feeling and how somebody else is reacting to what it is I'm saying or doing. And when people don't know really how somebody else is reacting or feeling based on what I'm doing or what they're doing, and they don't know what reaction is coming, they think that they know, but they're wrong. They assume things are okay and they're not. Then it's really important to understand that if you can learn to be smarter about what you might say or do and how it's likely to make somebody else feel as opposed to what you think is okay. And that occasionally you test how they're reacting to you by asking, geez, what did you think about that? I wasn't sure about whether to say it that way or not. Or somehow finding some way to test how they're really reacting to you and hopefully getting them to tell you the truth. It's not always easy to tell somebody the truth when you don't like what they're doing. I think most of you know that already. So the concept was taking challenging situations and asking, well, starting with, tell me a little bit about your situation. So if you wanted to call in right now, if you took the number at the screen and you saw it and you said, I got a situation I'd like to talk to you about, Chuck, then you would call that number. You see the number, it's a phone number, and then it asks you for a PIN. After you press the numbers into your phone, it asks for a PIN, you type the PIN in, and then you press the pound sign. When you call me, I'm going to ask you, tell me a little bit about your circumstance and situation. And you can use, I'd like you to use a name. It doesn't have to be your real name if you're uncomfortable with that, but just any name so I can call you by some name. And I say, okay, so John, here's what I understand you to say. And I will repeat back to you so I make sure I get it. So I understand what's happening for you. And then I'll ask you, okay, so based on that, how are you feeling? That's the first question in my roadmap. How are you feeling? And let's say it's Jacqueline, and Jacqueline is a person who is important for John in his workplace, and it's a teammate that he needs to get along with, and it's not working. And he wants to somehow get along with Jacqueline, and it's not working. And I ask him, so how do you think Jacqueline's feeling right now? And so we start with, what are you feeling, and who else is key, and what is he or she or they feeling? And then I ask, okay, if you could magically just make a different feeling that you'd want for yourself and for Jacqueline, what would be the ideal feeling for you and for Jacqueline? What would it be? And then when we talk about the ideal feelings, and I help you with that, I ask you, so what might possibly help you get from what is your current feeling, to what you'd love to feel? What would be ideal to feel for you, and what is for Jacqueline, and what would be ideal to feel for her? And then we start talking about, how do we do it? And that's the third part. The first part is, what is? The second question is, what's ideal in terms of feelings? And the third is, how do we get from what you are feeling to what you'd like to feel ideally? How do we do it? And then finally, when we're talking about certain strategies that might help us to get ourselves to what we want to feel, and whoever it is, like Jacqueline, to feel what we want her to feel, and we talk about what is possible, what we think might work, I then ask the last part of the roadmap, which is, okay, of any of the suggestions and strategies we're considering, which one is something that you think you are able to do? You have the skill that you need. You have the time that you need, the energy, and maybe it might take money or something else, some other resource. You have everything you need. That's the first part. Are you really able to do this? And the second question, just as important but quite different, is, are you willing? And I know it almost doesn't make sense that if you're able and you got a strategy that's going to work, why wouldn't you be willing? Well, again, that's a much longer conversation, and I have found it non-productive when somebody's unwilling to try to understand that without a deep therapy session, why they're unwilling to do something that's going to work. So I said, let's not pick that one. But of the other ones we talked about, which one are you actually willing to do? Maybe even excited to do? And when we have a strategy that is sound and you're capable of executing, and it's also something that you're not only willing, but maybe even excited to do, we have what I call an emotion-based plan. That's the emotion roadmap. That's how it works. So I'd like to talk about dining out. What expectations do people have when they dine out? And let me give you a couple of examples of things that happen when you dine out. One example, and this has to do with some of the work I was doing recently, talking with people in restaurants whose business it is, who are expert in this. They know their business better than I do, but I do know about emotional intelligence. And I was trying to say, here's some ideas that might be useful in your business. What do you think? So one of the things that I've recognized when I've dined out is that when a server delivers a dish to you and you eat your dish, first of all, how quickly does the server get back to you and ask you, is everything okay? Because if the server goes away and doesn't come back for half an hour, It's too late to do something if it's not okay. That's number one, right? Number two is if somebody does come by in a timely fashion and says to you, sir, are you enjoying your meal? Ma'am, are you enjoying your meal? Miss, are you enjoying your meal? And you say, yeah, it's great. Thank you so much. Everything's fine. Is there anything else I can get you? No, we're good. Thank you. That's clearly an affirmative. You're good. But what if they say, fine? They just say, fine. And you move on. Now, fine, in my experience, sometimes means fine and I'm just busy. But sometimes fine means not really fine, doesn't it? It means that I'm fine. It's not worth dealing with. I don't want to talk about it, but this is disappointing. And you can sort of learn to recognize that as a server, at which point, what might a server do? A server at that point might say, I'm glad it's fine, sir. Is there anything else I might do for you or get for you? Is there something that would make this better in some meaningful way for you? I want it to be great. Well, then you might get my attention and you might say, no, really, it's fine. Thank you very much for saying so. Okay, and then you move on. Or, you know what? This isn't quite what I thought, or it's something isn't quite right, and I tell you about it. Would you like me to remove this and get something else for you, sir? Is there something else I could do for you? Could I offer you something in the way of a drink, soft drink if you're not drinking liquor, or a glass of wine or a cocktail? Or could I offer you a dessert? Is there something I could do, or a salad, or some other thing that I could do to make this right for you? Because I want this to be a special experience for you. Or something along those lines. Now, how many servers do that? And by the way, it isn't just servers, is it? Because some servers are told, just keep moving. If somebody doesn't ask you for something, don't ask. Don't look for problems. Just keep moving. But when you want that special experience, don't you want to go out to the place that really cares about you and your experience and how it shows up? So let me ask, if you've got some thoughts about that and you've had some experiences, you're wondering what should you have done, or what did you do, how did it turn out, or you've had some wonderful experiences dining out, some amazing experiences dining out. What made it amazing? What can you tell all my friends and colleagues in the restaurant hospitality business? What makes you want to come back to their places? Now, I'm sure they have their ideas, and I'm sure they already know a lot about what works and why it's special, what makes it special. But it'd be fun to hear from you, I think. And also, if there's any chefs out there, or any people in the restaurant business that want to talk about what's it like, by the way, for you in terms of customers? What's it like when you have a challenging customer? I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me just give you this number because I'd love to hear from you. The number is 1-402-225-0781. I'll do it slow again. 1-402-225-0781. Once you type in the number, you'll be asked for a PIN. And the PIN is 882-041-574, and then the pound sign. So I hope that there's people out there that have some thoughts about this. I know it's an interesting topic. Most people, even when it's challenging economically to go out to eat, love to go out for a meal. I know I came back, I was working, and I came back and I'd eaten out, and I went down, and as I said, I was working with some wonderful people in the restaurant business, and they were very gracious and wanted me to try everything. So I ate a lot of food, perhaps more than I should have. But they kept saying, you should try this, you should try this, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and it was great, and I know how much passion they put into wanting you to like what they've done. One of the chefs actually spent some time talking to me about, putting together a menu book based on the ingredients that they purchased that had every possible allergy accounted for, so that if somebody told you they have a certain allergy, you could go to his guide and you would get a recipe based on the ingredients that they had that would produce certain meals that would be safe for that person to eat. Isn't that another aspect of what makes it wonderful place for you to go out to eat when you do have allergies and you are concerned about somebody put something, nuts, mustard, or something that caused you to have a reaction in the past. And you really want people to know what they're doing and to get that kind of thing right, don't you? So again, if you have some thoughts about what it feels like or when you go out to dine, what that means to you, what makes for a wonderful experience, pick up the phone, give me a call. I'd love to talk with you about it. And if you're in the business and you have challenges with customers and you want to talk a little bit about that and inform customers, what should they do if the food comes out and it's cold and it's supposed to be warm or hot even? How should a customer handle that? What, from a restaurant chef, server, manager perspective, what would you like people to do? And what should be the response, by the way? Because sometimes certain meals take a long time. Other meals are sort of somewhat almost ready and they don't take as much time. And if you've had a meal that took a while to prepare and to come out and it's not right, and other people at your table, all the meals come out at the same time, which doesn't always happen either, but it should. And everybody's got the meal at the same time, but yours isn't right. And you know if you send it back, it's going to be a long wait. Everybody's going to finish their meals while you're waiting. And then they're going to have to wait for you, theoretically anyway, when your meal comes. That doesn't sound great. So what are the choices? Is there something else I can get for you? Is there something else that I could do quickly that would take its place? And it's complimentary because we want you to have the really, really positive experience with us. We want everybody, you and everybody else, walking out the door saying, this is an excellent restaurant. They care about their customers deeply. They get things right 99% of the time. When they make a mistake, they fix it as fast as soon as they know. And they do it really well. Who does that? Where would you like to go to dine? So to me, we all like that experience. I mean, I started to tell you that I had this wonderful experience where I was down working with all these restaurants, and this is in Disney World, so it's quite a nice place to be. I was down for a few days, and one of the things that happened in my experience was I had a lot of great experiences, and now I'm coming home, and I know that my wife is home. She's waiting for me. She has friends. She's gone to meetings. She's been out at different events, the clubs that she belongs to, and she's had a nice few days. But she's missed me, and of course, I'm working, but I'm in a resort and I'm eating great food. And so when I came home, one of the things that I used to think that was really important for me after being away, because I used to travel a lot more, I'd come home and I'd love a home cooked meal. But I'm more emotionally intelligent these days, or at least trying to be, because I do this work for so long now. I'm really much more conscious about it. And I thought to myself, my wife's been cooking for herself for the last few days. There's no fun in that. So her excitement is having me home, and she was excited to see me, so that was good. But also I thought, you know what? Would you like to go out to dinner? I've been going out myself, and she said, well, wouldn't you like a home cooked meal? I said I would, but I don't need that right now. I think I'd like to do something for you. And you've been kind of holding down the fort while I'm gone. So why don't you and I go out to dinner tonight? And I'd like to go wherever you want to go, whatever you'd like to eat. I've been eating great food. I'd like you to have an experience where you go someplace you want to be and the food that you want to eat. And I just want to be with you. And I'd like to do that. And so she was appreciative of that. And that's great, right? But yeah, sure, I would have liked to have stayed home. It would have been a little easier for me. I've been out to eat. I've been eating lots of good food. But it isn't always about me, is it? It's about us, our family, or others. A lot of times people think emotional intelligence is about helping them be better, get more done, be more efficient, more effective, be more influential. It's also about being more thoughtful about others in your life. That's a big, big, big part of it. It's about being thoughtful about others. One of my colleagues, I've said this a few times, you may have heard this before if you've listened to me before. It's a fellow named Dan Goleman. Dan's the most well-known author writing about emotional intelligence. He's a psychologist, but he doesn't do research himself. He typically picks up on what others have done and finds a way to tell the world about different discoveries in the fields of psychology, really, but also particularly in the last 20 years or so in the field of emotional intelligence. And Dan had an interesting comment about empathy. And let me share this with you because I think it's really important, and it really emphasizes the point I just made, which is that, emotional intelligence is about me being more effective, me being more powerful, more influential, more accomplished. It's all those things. But boy, I think it's equally important, if sometimes not even more important, to be really effective in understanding what does this other person that I say I care about need from me right now, in this moment. What do they need me to say? What do they need me to do? What do they need me to feel? And can I be there for them? That's a big part of what I think makes emotional intelligence work, is that it's not just about me. It's about all of us together, trying to be as helpful and as kind and as supportive of each other as we possibly can. I'll say more about that, especially if I don't get any calls about this idea about dining. I was hoping people would call in about dining. So I'm hoping perhaps maybe somebody will pick up the phone and call. Again, you can see the number on top of the screen. If you're watching, you can see the number. I'll say it one more time. The number to call is 402, if you're on a landline, 1. But if you're on a cell phone, 402-225-0781. 402-225-0781. And when you finish that, you type in the PIN 882-041-574 and the pound sign. You got it. So if you want to call in, please do. But I started to tell you about Dan Goleman, and what Dan was talking about one day in a group meeting that I was in with him was this idea of empathy. And he was saying that there's really 3 kinds of empathy. And I thought to myself, I only know of 2 kinds of empathy. I wonder what he means. So he went on to say, one empathy is this idea of intellectual empathy. Knowing what another person feels, knowing why another person feels a certain way, knowing how to help a person change how they feel. That's intellectual empathy. That's not feeling it in your gut, but it's understanding in your mind what other people are having. So got somebody on the phone with us, I guess, right now. So who's on the line? And you're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, this is Brandon.
Hi, Brandon. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for calling, Brandon. What did you want to talk about this subject?
Well, just I've been in the restaurant industry for most of my career. I think you bring up some really interesting points that not a lot of us have pondered, whether we're in the restaurant industry or not in the restaurant industry, of what does that interaction look like, or ideally what should it look like between the guest and the server. I kind of came up in, I don't know if you want to call it just the old ways or old school ways of dealing with guests. And we always, came up with the customer is always right, no matter what. The guest is always right. So if it almost takes any sort of responsibility off of the guest for any sort of emotional intelligence. But I think to your point, a lot has changed since then. And I think when you look at people today, a very acute or severe reaction from a guest may actually trigger, a poor response from the server or even from the management staff. So I do think it's interesting to talk about if I'm a guest, what does that look like when I'm going into a restaurant if I'm not happy with something, and how should I react to that?
Yeah, so you've been around this, I know, Brandon, for a long time with a lot of the people that you service in your role for the organization that you're in, and so the question is, what do you think the chefs and the servers and the managers or the maitre d's or whoever's in the restaurant, what are they hoping for when a guest has a bad experience? What would you say is the best way for a guest to react?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just like anything else that we're talking about. I think with emotional intelligence is that, I think the guest really does need to be aware of what do I want to feel like and what do I want them to feel like. Now, I think, as a guest, it's like the reaction you give is going to affect what it is that you're going to get back. Now, I think with most guests, if they're upset about something, I believe they simply want an acknowledgement that something went wrong, and they want whatever was wrong to be fixed, right? And I think keeping that in mind, that's ideally, how a guest should react when they have an issue is, with kindness, with politeness, but direct. And it's okay to say, hey, this wasn't to our expectation, or I'm upset about that, about this, and how can we work through it?
Well, it's interesting. I that I've done some work with the hospitality industry over the years, and
Yes.
and one of the people that I have really learned a lot from, who is a great leader. He's a fellow that some of the people that in your organization have worked with too. A fellow named John Caparello. He's a good friend and a great leader. And John told me one time when he was in charge of a hotel, he was a general manager. He said, a lot of times something goes wrong at the front desk when somebody's checking in. Room isn't ready, or the room wasn't quite right when they went in it, or just something is amiss. And when that happens, there's an opportunity that could either go south or north. It could either be something that turns into something quite awful, and the guest experience is something that they just can't wait to tell other people about the terrible experience they had with their room when they showed up. Or the front desk clerk, he said he gave discretion up to $100, this was a while ago, that they could make things right by either offering the guest, if they had a restaurant, a dinner, or they could offer them a drink, or they could offer them something, or maybe a late checkout, or just something that allowed them to feel like this person cares about me. It wasn't the way I had hoped, but you know what? I actually feel pretty good about this. Maybe even better than I would have if nothing happened. That's what his goal was that people go away talking about the restaurant, that, hey, there was a mistake, but boy, did they work hard to get it right. And I don't know what that looks like in a restaurant, because I don't know if a server has discretion. I know I've been to some restaurants where servers will say, "Oh, I'm very sorry, this isn't right." And then, as I was mentioning, maybe the server has the latitude, or maybe they don't. Or a manager, only a manager has that kind of discretion. But I don't know. Is there any thoughts behind that in terms of, what is allowed in different places and different restaurants that you've heard about?
Yeah, and I've been in many different places throughout my career, and I feel like only one of those places did we actually have. We just called it the make it right policy. And there wasn't really a monetary limit on it. It was just basically do whatever it takes to make sure that the guest leaves happy, right? So in the restaurant industry, obviously that could be as simple as buying a round of drinks or comping a part of the meal that wasn't up to the expectation, or it could be as extreme as taking care of the entire meal, and we would train people that it just sort of depends. It's situational, and you want to make sure that you don't under deliver, but you also don't need to necessarily, over deliver. We just want to get to a point where the guest is leaving happy. But yeah, I think I love that idea of having this amount of, hey, you can do this without checking in with a manager. You're empowered to do this to take care of the guest. Now, if it goes above and beyond that, hey, come and grab the manager. I will say, any place I've ever worked in the restaurant industry, though, one constant with all the leaders I've always worked with is they are always very supportive of doing whatever it takes to make sure that the guest leaves happy, because I think they understand that a guest that isn't leaving happy is much more damaging than anything that we can do to try to help the guest to be happy while they're still there.
So that's great. Now, the flip side that you and I have talked about a little bit was, what if you've got an obnoxious guest, which happens? You got somebody that's really a problem, and not only is it a problem for the server, but it's a problem for the other guests in the restaurant, and that's trickier, I think, because now the customer isn't right. At least this customer isn't. What do you do with that?
Yes. Yeah, and that's always a very difficult one for us to deal with. And I will say that those guests that truly are causing a major disruption, or those guests that are really truly out to get something for free or cause problems, you're talking about a very, very small percentage of guests. Most people are out there, they want to have a great time. They're friendly even when there is an issue. So we're talking about something that happens not very often. And in my 20 some odd years of experience, I think I've only seen it maybe a handful of times. But no, there is a point where, if a guest is being, whether there's an issue or not, if a guest is being disruptive and disrupting other diners around them, then at some point a leader needs to make a decision on whether or not those individuals should be asked to leave. Obviously, that needs to be done with the utmost respect, and really that decision needs to be made by whoever the manager on duty is. But I draw my line at whether or not they're disrupting other guests, right? And if that's the case, then something needs to be done, because it's not just about those guests, right? It's about all the guests around them.
Right. Okay. So those are really helpful points. Anything else you'd like to share, Brandon, about being in the restaurant business and this topic about dining out and how you want people to feel?
Yeah, I just want to say, for anybody out there that's not in the restaurant industry, I'm sure you know that everybody that works in the restaurant industry is always saying, we wish that everybody out there had to work in the restaurant industry for, a certain amount of time just to see what it's like, But I will say we love our guests. We love all of our guests. But, as a guest, if you have an issue, a little bit of grace, a little bit of emotional intelligence, a little bit of friendliness is going to go a long way in making sure that gets fixed and fixed quickly. I mean, the people that are serving you have emotions as well. And while most of us in the restaurant industry have kind of learned how to not take certain things personally, at the same time, you're going to get, more of the reaction that you want if you're friendly from the get-go.
That's so interesting on multiple levels for me, because one of the things that I've found, there's an old saying, you get more bees with honey or whatever. The idea of trying to be smart about how you want somebody to feel. When I've been in a restaurant and the meal hasn't been right, and your initial thought is, oh, okay, what do I do now? If I'm gonna send this back because it's not right, then everybody else is going to be eating while I'm sitting here. And if it's a dish that takes a long time, they're going to have to wait they may not wait for me, but I'm going to be eating alone then. Yeah. But that's not a good choice. But what do I do? And so I think, obviously I'm going to be upset by that, and maybe even angry, because this is an injustice, right? I came out, I'm spending a fair amount of money, and I want this to be right. And it's not. But things happen. Things aren't always the way you hope they'd be. And that doesn't mean that you have to get upset about it, because I think the question is, just like you said on the server's part, but also on the guest part, what can we do together to make this right? What's going to work for me? Maybe just bring me a soup or something so I can eat something, or a salad or something that's easy, that's quick, and then obviously take the meal off the charge, and then if you offered something else, can we get you a dessert to share, or desserts for the table, or something that says, that's all of a sudden it feels even better than it did when we were just talking amongst ourselves as guests, and now the restaurant has stepped in and made life even better, even though it started with a mistake. That's what, even as a guest, I want that to happen, and so I try as much as I can to be very nice about it when I first start with it.
And I think most guests would feel much better if, when they have an issue, they approach it in a way with kindness and thinking about how the other person might feel. They're going to feel a lot better about the experience, and so is the server in the restaurant. To your point, we all make mistakes. We understand that they can be, annoying, inconvenient, upsetting. But it's just like anything else. If you're dealing with that off of raw emotion, you might not be, it might not be the most effective way to deal with that.
Right. It often isn't. I mean, again, people are trying to be supportive and helpful, and that's what I started to say. I'll just finish this with you, Brandon. This fellow Dan Goleman, and you might have heard me say this when I was with you, but the idea of empathy was that intellectual empathy, understanding why somebody feels the way they do, and perhaps how to help them to feel different or better. The other was emotional empathy, feeling what somebody else feels. And then Dan added the third, and I never agreed with him that this was a skill set, but it was a value choice in my mind. But he said that the third part of empathy is caring about how somebody else feels. And honestly, I think that's the most important aspect of empathy. I mean, even if you're not good at understanding and you're not good at feeling somebody else feels, but you now know somebody's feeling something's wrong and you care, that's the most important part of it.
Absolutely.
That's the way I feel. Okay, well, let me leave you with that, Brandon. Thank you so much for the phone call. I really appreciate you calling in, and look forward to seeing you and doing more with you.
Yes, sounds great. Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks, Brandon. Take care. Bye-bye now. Okay, so I wanted to just talk a little bit about the idea of, when you dine out or any experience you have where you're seeking, some kind of customer experience, things don't always work out the way that you want. But if you approach that by asking yourself, okay, how am I feeling? How do I want to feel? What do I want to have happen now? By the way, I've had all kinds of positive experiences by, I guess I got another call. Okay, somebody else has just called in. Okay, you're on the air. Who's calling, please? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Do you hear me? Sorry.
Can you speak up? Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, how you doing?
I'm good. And this is?
Rodolfo Guzman.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Rodolfo Guzman.
Don't know that I heard that. Are you talking into a speaker?
Yes, I can. Let me see if I can.
Can you talk on the phone? Otherwise, I'm going to have to end the call because I can't really hear you. Are you there? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, well, thanks for trying to call in anyway. I'm just going to finish up then. I just wanted to say that when people are trying to have the experience of working in a restaurant or in a hotel or in a retail store of some kind or an ice cream shop or a car dealership or in real estate, and they're trying to do something, provide a service for somebody who is a customer of theirs, and things don't go right, it's often the case that you can try to understand from a perspective, what is it I'm feeling? What is it they're feeling? What would be ideal to feel, and how can I make that happen? I'm doing some work with a group that has got some trust issues in their organization, and I wanted to try to be helpful with this, and I thought I just wanted to make the point about as leaders, for all of you who are leaders in any aspect of your life, whether it's in your communities, in your organizations, in your respective religious organizations, or in a club that you belong to, on sports teams, wherever you might lead. As a leader, or as a group of leaders, if you're about to do something, make some kind of change or announcement, something that's going to be very impactful for all those that are part of your organization, can you stop before you announce, before you decide, before you conclude, whatever it is you're thinking or about to do, and ask yourself, how is this going to make people feel? And is it how we want them to feel? How is it going to make them feel? And is it how we want them to feel? And if it's not how you want them to feel, can you stop and ask yourself as a leadership group or as an individual leader, is there some way I can do this better? Is there some way I can alleviate some of the pain this is going to cause? Is there some way I might even get people to be supportive and embrace this? Is there something I might do on the front end proactively rather than have to deal with all the reactions that are likely to be highly negative if I just say what I'm about to say or roll out the intervention that I'm about to create and execute in my organization? Is there some way I can do this better and more intelligent? Hello? You're on the air. Who's calling?
Hello, how you doing?
Good. How are you? And can I call you by your name?
I'm fine. Rodolfo.
What is your name?
Rodolfo.
Rodolfo. Okay, gotcha.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Rodolfo.
have some issues with my phone and my computer.
Okay, gotcha now. What would you like to say about the restaurant business?
Well, to work in the restaurant business, you have to be, I want to say, very passionate about what you're doing. When you go out for some dinner experience, like in my case, you're looking for a place, where they treat you well and they serve you well. Sometimes when you go and the servers some are amazing and some are okay. But I think all has to be with the experience of the servers. When I talk sometimes to a few friends, they are servers, they have this phrase, they need to read the table, right? So if you arrive to a restaurant with kids, and it's very sunny outside, and the server approaches to you, and someone they have experience, the first thing they offer you is a drinks for your kids and a drinks for you because outside is very sunny and it's very hot. You can see if the person is sweating, if they need to have some kind of refreshment drink
Nice,
in the table.
very nice, Rodolfo. Right.
And for that you have to use the emotional intelligence to read the table and what the guests need as soon as they arrive to the restaurant. And so sometimes they ask me, to go to the table, and because the guest didn't like something or something was wrong with what we sent to the table, and as soon as I approach the table, I use my emotional intelligence to see what's going on with the people. If it's people, maybe they have an anniversary or a birthday, or maybe they have just a date, you have to figure out in the first seconds, what's going on in that table. And then you can see the drink, the glass drink is almost empty. Sometimes when you go at table, if you don't have refill the water or refill the drink, you're going to get upset because you are thirsty and you want to drink more. And when I ask me for something is wrong with the food or whatever, I first, I never say they are wrong because as somebody say, the guest is always right. I try to find out what was the issue, what was the problem, and I let them know, if the steak is, let's say, overcooked, I want to make sure I make another steak for you, and ask you for the temperature, and went back to the kitchen, I cook by myself, take a few minutes back to the table, and I let them guess, the temperature of the meat is right now medium or medium rare, whatever is they order, and they cover the steak, and I'm waiting for that, and then they look at the steak, and they say, oh, this is great. I said, thank you so much, for waiting, and I want to make sure to accommodate, all his necessities to make sure they enjoy our experience with us. But sometimes, you have people they don't are happy even with the second steak,
right.
And someone's are right. Maybe the steak texture is not right, or sometimes things can happen. But always, I try to give a dessert or give something else to make sure they enjoy our experience with us. I always tell to everybody, the guests have always right, and don't like to leave any guest leaving the restaurant, unhappy.
Sure.
My priority is as a chef to make sure every guest, go happy. If they don't like something, try to make something special or unique for the person, and they enjoy the experience with us.
Oh, that's great. I do want to, I do have to, this is the end of my show, so I've got to close, Rodolfo, but I do want to say thank you for calling in, and maybe on another time I can ask you about, I don't want to do it now because I have to close the show off, but I do want to ask the question because sometimes I've been a server myself, and I know also I've had my daughters, they've been servers, and sometimes when the guest isn't happy with a meal and they have to go back and talk to the chef, that's not a happy experience. In certain instances. So maybe talk about that a little bit too. But I also want to say you are the chef that created the allergy, right? The allergy recipe book.
Yes.
Yeah, and then that's yes, I think that's wonderful, and that's why I talked about it. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that another time when I'm on the air.
Awesome. And when you mentioned that, I said to myself, I give you an emotional impact when I show you my menu.
Okay. Okay, Rodolfo. Well, thank you so much for calling in. And I'm going to sign off and say goodbye to everybody now. And I appreciate all of those of you that are listening. And again, this is Chuck Wolf. You've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I hope you got some thoughtful ideas about, one, being thoughtful about others. So maybe you don't feel like going out to eat, but maybe your spouse or your partner does. So be thoughtful that way. And when you are out to eat and it's not quite right, think about everybody's feelings involved and make the best decisions you can, trying to be as emotionally sensitive and supportive of everybody. And the world's a better place. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.
For over 40 years, SCM
has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education,
and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.